What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to
History of technology. The first production Rio appeared in 2000. There were two bodies of the first generation, and if everything is clear with the sedan, the second body is still undecided whether it was a small station wagon or a too-big hatchback. The output of this car was a serious request for the whole world. The design was engaged at once in two departments of the company, European and Japanese, but at the same time very much wanted to win the American market. And it should be noted that Kia approached to realization of plans responsibly. The range of motors for the American market differed from that offered in the rest of the world. In the USA, they did not try to sell cars with the smallest motors of 1.3 liters only. 1.5 and 1.6 and basic equipment was rather rich: GUR, air conditioner, central locking with remote control, front window lifters, electric mirrors, driver's airbag. And for money it was possible to get ABS with electronic distribution of braking forces and a sunroof, and even CD changer. And, of course, you could buy a car with automatic transmission. What this car lacked was at least a little bit interesting design. And Rio of the second generation, released in 2005, tried to make it more attractive. Motors of this generation, built on the platform JB Hyundai Kia, remained rather modest: petrol 1.4 liters and 1.6 and diesel 1.5 liters, but the design of restyling in 2010 was drawn by Peter Schreier himself, who in his time created, for example, Audi TD, VW Passat B5, VW Golf 4, Audi A6 C5. The car turned out to be quite successful, and in Russia, also popular due to the fact that since 2010 it was assembled at Avtoda. But still the loudest success awaited the third generation, which appeared in 2011. For the B-Class, this Rio was both pretty enough outwardly and far from poor inside, though only in the top-end configuration. At the same time, technically it remained very modest. We could have only two motors, 1.4 and 1.6 liters, MKP or automatic. 4-speed before restyling, and 6-speed after. This car since August 15, 2011 was also assembled in Russia, at the Hyundai plant in St. Petersburg. And it was a real success. Along with Solaris, Rio became a real bestseller. And, most likely, there were objective reasons for this. We'll talk about them a little bit below, and for now let's get acquainted with the car we are going to drive to the service. Our car was produced in 2012, so, before the restyling. Its mileage is 113,000 kilometers, motor 1.6, 123 horsepower, 4-speed automatic transmission and average configuration without climate and keyless access, but with all the most necessary: all window lifters, air conditioning, heated electric mirrors, frontal airbags, heated wiper rest area, driver's seat with elevator, heated front seats, auxiliary, USB. As I have already mentioned, technically this Kia is very close to Solaris, so a lot of things we will talk about further will be useful for Solaris owners. Let's start with the most obvious: how much it will cost for routine maintenance with replacement of oil and filter, air and cabin filters. But here it is necessary to make an important remark. We will examine the car in a good network car service fit service. As a basis for the cost of works and parts, we will take calculations of this service. Of course, in a garage service many things will be noticeably cheaper, but I doubt very much that they will be better. We also estimate good spare parts, no new-namer from the Celestial Empire. I will give prices in rubles, because there is no sense to recalculate everything in a more stable currency. Everything changes very quickly. But the order of prices will be clear. So, let's go. Engine standard maintenance with oil and all filters replacement will cost 9,200 rubles, which is not so much today. The main sum will have to be given for oil. In our case it is rather expensive synthetic bardal for 59.68 rubles, but everything else costs quite humanely. Oil filter, 534 rubles, air filter, 698, cabin filter, 613. And another 41 rubles is not a pity to give for the drain plug gasket. Is it possible to save something and change oil and filters yourself? Quite. Our 1.6-litre G4FC, as well as 1.4-litre G4FA, is not a complicated motor, aluminum with distributed injection and chain-driven. Timing without hydrocompensators. And the oil on it is changed in the same way as on any other motor. The only difficulty is to unscrew the oil filter, which is easier to reach from below. When changing the oil, you need to remember one detail: the regulations provide for maintenance with an interval of 15,000 kilometers, and it is very much. It is necessary to shorten the interval and change oil at least once in 10,000 kilometers, especially if you have to stand in traffic jams for a long time. Changing the air filter is even easier. Here you can even do without a screwdriver. Unlatch two latches on the right side of the housing, slide the housing cover to the right. Pull out the old filter and install the new one. True, at the bottom of the housing often accumulates debris, and it is better to remove it from there so that it does not get into the cylinders. But this advice is universal, relevant for any car. In general, there are no questions here. Air filter housing: sometimes there is a need to replace the belt of additional units, aka drive belt, aka service belt. It is necessary to change it every 60,000, but it is better to evaluate its condition, at least visually, at each maintenance service. It happens that it wears out a little faster than the norm. The belt here is one for all units, which means that it is long and expensive. The original gates will cost 25-28 rubles, the fallen one on the market will be, of course, cheaper, but it is not necessary to put it, replacement, in 800. You can replace the belt yourself, but for this you will have to fight a little with the tensioner. It is inconvenient to platoon it. In addition, before removing the old belt, it would be good to take a picture of it, so as not to get confused in the pulleys. The plugs on this motor should be changed more often. The ignition coils on this motor are pretty weak, and if a spark plug is out of alignment, it's surprisingly easy to blow a coil. Good thing these plugs are easy to change. We unscrew the 4 bolts of the decorative cover and remove the coils from the plugs. It is easier not to unclip each coil from the harness, but to disconnect the whole harness. Firstly, it is always easier to remove one connector than 4, and secondly, the clamps on the coils are very weak and easy to break. And then everything is clear. We unscrew the old plugs and put new ones. A set of Denso will cost 2,000, and it is much cheaper than to change coils. There are 4 of them. One AC Delco coil costs 38-32 rubles, and with the inscription Hyundai Kia, even more expensive. You should not spare money on plugs, and you should forget to change them every 30,000 kilometers. The motor, as I have already said, is chain, but the modern chain is the chain of the old Mercedes M104 motor. Theoretically, it should serve 150,000 kilometers, but in practice it can stretch even at 100,000. At replacement, it is necessary to remember one interesting detail: Hyundai Kia has no ready set of timing. All necessary details should be bought separately, or to buy a set of the third-party manufacturer, which is not always good. Work on replacement will cost 12,900 rubles, but spare parts. The chain itself is not too expensive, 5,946p. But besides it you need to buy a tensioner, 6,340p. 2 guides, 960 and 1228p. A gasket for the cylinder head cover, 6075, and a lot of related fasteners. And also at the same time, in a good way, you need to change the oil and antifreeze. And as a result, the cost of all consumables and parts grows to 39,660 rubles, and the total cost of replacement up to 52,572p. Of course, you can do it all cheaper, but it is better to change the chain in a good service, so that it would not be painfully painful later for aimlessly thrown away money. When buying a Rio with mileage, the chain should definitely be paid attention to. To do this, you should at least listen to how the engine behaves after a cold start. If there is a suspicious knock from the side of the timing, it is most likely that the stretched chain has become loose. Well, and computer diagnostics, which will find the chain stretching by phase missynchronization, will not hurt. One more feature of the motor is absence of hydrocompensators. Every 90,000 it is desirable to adjust the valve clearance, and before buying to listen to how the motor works. The main thing is not to confuse the knocking of valves with cracking of injectors, which are very loud here. Well, now let's move to the most painful place, to the catalytic converter. The problem of crumbling catalytic converter on these motors really exists, but it is greatly exaggerated. For example, on this car it looks like new, although it happens that it starts to crumble at a ridiculous mileage of 30 to 40,000 kilometers. And its ceramic chips can actually get into the intake. There is, however, a sect of people who do not believe that crumbs can get from the exhaust into the intake. Well, in this case, it is advisable to study the theory of internal combustion engines and emphasize the concept of phase overlap, especially on motors with a phase shifter. For those who believe in scoring due to a faulty catalytic converter, I will continue. The main thing is to monitor its condition. This can be done with the help of computer diagnostics, but it is better to look at the catalyst with your eyes sometimes. More precisely, with an endoscope. To do this, remove the first lambda sensor and insert the endoscope camera into its hole. If the edge of the catalyst is uneven, it should be urgently removed. Well, and at purchase of Rio on the secondary market to pay attention to signs of maslojura. At least on presence of blue smoke from an exhaust pipe and a canister with oil on topping up in a trunk. Serviceable Rio motors do not consume oil. If you keep an eye on the motor and do not pour 90-second gasoline into it, it serves well and 300,000 kilometers. There are not so many weak points in it, and the opinion that after 150,000 kilometers it is time to carry it to the dump is a myth. Quite a decent motor. Now let's move to transmission. Transmission, both automatic boxes and 4-stage A4AF3 and newer 6-stage A6GF1 do not cause any negativity. Our car has the first one. And despite the fact that it has only 4 gears, it is quite comfortable and economical. And the only thing to do with it is to change its oil. According to the regulations, it should be done every 90,000 kilometers. This is a normal mileage, but if you have to stand in traffic jams often or if you are a racer at heart, it is better to reduce the interval to 60,000 kilometers. On this car the oil was changed not so long ago, at the mileage of 90,000 kilometers. There are no claims to the box now, but too generous layer of sealant squeezed out by the pallet of the box hints that it was not done very carefully. Excess of this sealant can get inside the box, and this may cause problems with the hydraulics. If you do not want to change the oil yourself or you do not know how to do it, it is better to go to a service. The work is not too expensive, but you will have to pay a lot for the oil. A litre of the same transmission bardal costs 1768 To wash the box and replace all the oil it will require 15 litres, the total 26,520 You will also need at least a new filter, 2751p, sealant and plug gasket. Total for materials, 34,400. However, the oil can be found cheaper. From constructive features of this box I will note only one: aspiration to give a pendal when shifting from the first gear to the second when rolling. What to do? Understand and forgive, it is a norm. But if there is a kick when the accelerator pedal is pressed, it is another story. It should not be like that. The weak point of the gearbox is the bagel torque converter. It used to happen that on earlier cars they broke down during the warranty period, but now all defective torque converters are likely to have been replaced. But just in case, when buying a car with such a box, it makes sense to drive at an even speed of 60 to 80 km per hour. If there are jerks, perhaps the bagel has arrived and repair of the box will be required. There are no questions to drives and spruces. If the dust covers are intact, everything is usually good with them. Steering control here is simple, with usual GUR. It breaks rarely, though on the very first cars the steering shaft with a fixed-type cardan joint occasionally squeaked. At first, the joint was simply replaced under warranty, but then it was replaced with a sliding one, and the problem went away. What the steering can sometimes require is a replacement of the steering linkage lugs. It will cost 590p per side, the tip itself, 1889p CTR. Well, and do not forget to do the installation of camber angles, 1690p, after replacing the lugs. Running gear and brakes. I do not know what kind of a barbarian it is necessary to be to break something in rear running gear. Everything is very simple and very reliable. The front suspension is McPherson, the rear suspension is a beam, so maintenance and repair costs will be minimal. Let's start with the front suspension. The stabilizer bars may need to be replaced. We have long been accustomed to treating them as consumables, so there is no reason for sadness. Besides, it is not so expensive, 1180p. For work and 1800p for the rack itself, the price for the product's item. The second item of expenditure is ball bearings. Here, too, not too expensive, 1,500 for the ball, 1,600 for replacement. Separately, it is possible to replace and silent blocks of front levers on 1,000 rubles for a piece and for replacement, but if replacement requires both ball bearing and silent blocks at the same time, it is easier to replace the lever assembly. However, it usually does not come to that. The resource of these parts is very good. There is nothing to break at all in the rear. But on our car we found cracks on one beam silent block, which means that it should be replaced. It is better to replace both at once, 1859 rubles per piece, because the work on removal of the beam is quite expensive, 6,680 rubles. Against this background, the replacement of the silent block on one side, 2,000, looks not such a ruinous operation. Despite the fact that the brakes on the Rio are simple, they have one disadvantage: the calipers of the rear disc brakes can sour. Therefore, when replacing the pads, they must be serviced. Of course, you can do it yourself, it is not so difficult, but in the service this service will not ruin, they will ask only 1,500 rubles together with the replacement of the pads. Pads, of course, you can find any, there is a choice, but, for example, not bad Nishinbo cost 2097 rubles, front ones of the same company, 2,898 are. On our car, brakes already require attention, rear brakes are preparing to sour, there are characteristic traces on discs, and in front brakes it is time to change discs. Well, let's add the cost of discs, it is another 73.82 rubles for a pair, also Nishinbo. There is nothing more to say about brakes, everything is simple and reliable, there are no questions to ABS, block and sensors. Body, interior, to be honest, there is nothing to repair or service. The only concern is to eliminate chips on the roof along the windshield. The paintwork is thin, the roof is not galvanized, so there are a lot of chips, and they quickly begin to bloom. If you wish, you can get your hands on the door stops. They stop fixing doors at the age of 3 to 5 years, sometimes even earlier. It is not necessary to change the whole limiter for 2 or 3,000, there are repair kits on sale, which can be bought for 300 to 500 rubles. You only need to carefully remove the door trim, unscrew the limiter, and replace the plastic retainers from the repair kit. And here we can note one more peculiarity: in spite of very budgetary execution of the interior, almost nothing breaks there except one button, the button of air conditioner. The fault, of course, is not the button itself, but the compressor. It often failed during the warranty period, and its resource is very limited. A new one costs more than 30,000, you can find it for 5 at the dismantling shop. Whether it will work is a mystery covered by the darkness of the unknown. To take or not to take? It goes without saying that Kia Rio III is a budget car to the marrow of its bones. But rumors about its disposability are greatly exaggerated. In general, it has a good resource. One thing is upsetting: as well as any other budget car, it is often deprived of good service. They say that it will go as it is, there is nothing to break. Alas! Any technique will not tolerate careless attitude. The maintenance of this car will not be too overhead, but one condition is required: the car must not be killed by the previous owners. And unfortunately, there are a lot of such murdered cars. Especially white color, which is so fond of cabs. But if you find a well-maintained copy, check the chain, catalytic converter, and condition of automatic transmission, there are no questions to mechanics at all, you can buy it safely, it will not ruin. It may not please too much, but it will not ruin for sure. We express our gratitude to Fit Service, 12, Blagodatnia Street, St. Petersburg, +7 812 982 2848 for help in preparation of the material. In conclusion, the Kia Rio III stands out as a rare gem in the world of affordable vehicles, offering both reliability and low maintenance costs. With its straightforward design and accessible parts, keeping this car in top shape is not only feasible but also budget-friendly. By following the maintenance tips we've discussed, you can ensure your Kia Rio III remains a dependable companion for years to come. Thank you for watching, and we hope you found this guide helpful in navigating the repair and maintenance of your Kia Rio III.